Hi everyone, it's Rain here from Rain's Kitchen and Garden. I'm in the garden today and I'm going to talk to you about fertilizers. When we moved here a couple of years ago, we decided that we wanted to have a little more privacy. Now, this is our road, and honestly, people, if one car or truck a day passes by on this road, then that's really a major event because it's very quiet here. And sometimes it's just my car that passes by, but really during the summer it kind of becomes cottage country and there's a lot of weekenders that come up. So we like to have a little bit of privacy, and we thought about putting up a fence. Oh, there's Jack. Hey Jack, what are you doing? Sniffing around? We thought about putting up a fence, and we still might, but in the meantime we decided to start on our living fence. So we went around our acreage and we saw all these little saplings of pines and spruce. Here's one that's looking really good. And balsam trees. And we decided last summer to transplant them. But admittedly, we didn't know anything about transplanting trees. And you know, look at them. They're kind of yellow this year. This one's looking good. This is nice and green. But again, this one's yellow, and we planted a whole bunch of them. I think we planted 30 of them. And look at this one. It's red, you know? And we planted all these trees on the front of our property, all across the front here, in hopes that in maybe 10 years we would have a nice little privacy live fence, but they're getting yellow. So last year, and you know, we did our research, we tried to find information online, and we tried to talk to people who had done it before, but we knew nothing about fertilizers. We didn't think we needed them, and we didn't use them. So what we did was we went over to a nursery in town and we talked to a lady named Joan, and she taught us all about fertilizers. And I'm going to teach you about those today too. If you're like me, then fertilizers might be a little confusing for you. I always thought that fertilizers were those little cylinder things that you just poke into your plant and magic would happen after that. It's a little more than that. Sometimes you buy these fertilizers and they have these numbers on them, you know, 3 numbers on them. Most fertilizers have these 3 numbers. I'm sure there are some that have letters and more numbers, but standard fertilizers have 3 numbers, and they stand for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And those are the big 3 that plants need to grow and thrive. And just on an aside, if you don't know, when you're fertilizing your plant, you're actually fertilizing the soil. You're not fertilizing the plant, because the plant is going to drink from the soil and take all the nutrients it needs from that soil. So you're helping it to grow and thrive and become healthy by fertilizing the soil around it. I wanted to do this video outside today because it's such a beautiful day. This feels like a summer day for me. And I just wanted to say something. A lot of people always mention my hats. I have a huge hat collection. And so every time I do a video, I'm going to mention what kind of hat I have. The brand is called Resistol, and I think the line is called Concho. It's a Resistol Concho, just like you might say a Stetson Stagecoach or something like that. This is a Resistol Concho. And I love all my hats. And just in passing, there are the 3 numbers on the bottle of fertilizer that represent the big 3, like I mentioned, but fertilizers are also made up of many, many more micronutrients like calcium and zinc and sulfur. So it's not just the big 3. There's a whole bunch of nutrients in there that'll help your plants. But now I'm going to talk about the first of the big 3, the nitrogen. Nitrogen is the builder. It helps the stems grow healthy so that the plant is hardy and also produces nice green leaves. It also helps the plant to develop protein so that those plants that we eat, like fruits, vegetables, lettuces, herbs, they become nutritious with more nitrogen. The second of the big three is phosphorus. Phosphorus is the enforcer. Phosphorus basically helps the plant to develop very strong and healthy root systems. Phosphorus also helps with photosynthesis. We don't need a science lesson today, but basically photosynthesis is when the plant uses sun and water and carbon dioxide to make oxygen. And that helps the plant to develop bigger fruits and flowers. And the third of the big three is potassium, and potassium is the protector. The protector basically keeps the plant from disease. It helps the plant to be more disease resistant, and it also helps to keep the plant a little more healthy during drought and really cold weather. So that's just a little lesson about fertilizers, and I tried to make it as simple as possible because for me it was a little bit complicated. So last year, after speaking with Joan at the nursery, I bought 3 types of fertilizers. This one is tomato, 7-14-14, which means it's lower in nitrogen and it's got a pretty high amount of phosphorus and potassium. This type of fertilizer is good for above ground fruiting vegetables and fruits like tomatoes. That's why they called it tomato, because this one doesn't need as much nitrogen, but it does need some help in developing a good root system and also in developing flowers and fruits. Actually, the lady, Joan, explained it to me like this. She said, this is good for tomatoes because think of a tomato plant like it's crazy. It doesn't realize it's a tomato plant, that it's supposed to make tomatoes. Sometimes it just grows and grows and grows leaves and it forgets to grow tomatoes. And I think as gardeners, we all know that sometimes we're growing tomato plants and we're not growing tomatoes. So the lower nitrogen and the higher phosphorus and potassium content in this fertilizer will help the above ground fruiting vegetables and fruits to grow lots of flowers and lots of fruits, because the nitrogen is supposed to be for longevity, but it doesn't need to be long lasting because these are mostly annual plants. So we want to concentrate on the roots and the flowers and the fruits. The next one I bought was this one. It's 15-30-15. So it's got good amounts of nitrogen and potassium and a high amount of phosphorus. And I had to write this down because I couldn't remember it. Basically, this one it's an all-around good fertilizer for any plant because the high amounts of nitrogen and potassium are helping to build strength, promote growth, and resist disease. And the even higher amount of phosphorus is going to help with the root system. So once you have your plants in the ground, this is a good fertilizer to use. It's a good combination, a good percentage of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium to use to help the plant just be all around healthy. And this is the third one that I bought, 10-52-10. And I've already used this. It's kind of dirty. I might have to get more of it. And as you can see, the 52, that's the phosphorus. That is a huge amount of phosphorus. And this one is called Transplanter. So that is used because when you transplant a plant, or in my case, trees, they get stressed, you know. Their roots they really like to be left alone and they like their roots to develop. And when you transplant them, you can stress them and they need help sometimes. So what you want to do is add a little bit of fertilizer that has a high amount of phosphorus, because that is used to develop strong and healthy root systems. So this is the one I'm going to use today for my trees. And I'm going to hope that it's not too late. I only found out about fertilizers late last summer, after many months after I transplanted. So I'm going to give these trees as much help as they can get. Hopefully the phosphorus, the high phosphorus amount in the fertilizer will help them. I'm going to basically give them this 10-52-10 fertilizer every 2 weeks for about 6 weeks, and then I'm going to start giving them the 15-30-15 to help with their needles, their pine needles, their spruce needles, their balsam needles that are yellowing right now. And hopefully that'll help them to become more green and more healthy and more stable. This is poisonous to animals, so you have to make sure not to let your pets anywhere near this, at least for the first day when you put the fertilizer in, okay? I just wanted to show you how beautiful it is today. Look at that sky. And I'm pretty much alone here. I love it. Jack, come on. Jack and I are going to pick up our recycle bin. It's at the end of the road. I don't have garbage and recycling service here. I'm on a private road, so I'm not entitled to that, but I did speak to a really, really nice lady who owns the company that does the recycling and the garbage pickup, and she told me if I bring it to the end of the road, which is about 400 feet from my house, that her and her husband would take care of us and they'll pick up our garbage and our recycling. So we're really, really fortunate for that. It just takes a little bit of elbow grease to bring all that to the corner, but that's okay. I don't mind at all. I decided to put a little bit of that root fertilizer into my chive plant too. It's coming up pretty well. Look at that. They're nice thick chives. But I'm not going to use them this year. I'm going to let those chives just grow and get really hardy and thick and develop a great root system. And then maybe next year I can use them. Well, I just fertilized the 28 trees that we transplanted last summer, and my fingers are crossed that my fertilizing efforts will help save them and help them become strong, really healthy green trees. That's what I want, and that's what they deserve. So I'll keep you up to date in the future about how things are going, because I think it's very useful to learn about fertilizers and transplanting trees and things like that, and seeing how people deal with this in real life. You know, there are a lot of videos out there that show professionals and how they do it, but you know, a lot of us aren't professionals, and we learn as we go. So the last tree that I'm going to fertilize is this one here. Can you see it? This is an Alberta Spruce. I actually got this last November at Costco. It was kind of in the bargain bin where it was being marketed as a Christmas tree. It was, I'm not kidding, you would not see any green. It was filled with that fake spray foam snow. And can you imagine how the poor plant was feeling with all that all over it? So I figured it was half price, so I figured, okay, I'll take it home, and an Alberta Spruce, what a beautiful tree. I can transplant it into my yard. And I took it home, I gave it a good shower. I got most, I couldn't get all of it off. Even now, there's still some of that white fake snow on it. And I got most of that stuff off. And I was hoping that I could keep it alive all winter so that I could transplant it, and all summer so that I can transplant it this fall. Now, I know that trees, to be very healthy, need a dormant period. And that's why we have winter, right? At least in my climate, that's why we have winter for these trees. They bud in the spring, they're really beautiful and green, and then they need a little bit of a timeout. They need a winter's nap. And this little fella here didn't get his winter's nap. He was inside. I put him in the sun to try to keep, you know, the photosynthesis going, and I watered it as much as it needed, but it was still losing needles a lot. Like, I'll show you. And this is just some of them. It's kind of sad, you know. All those needles were lost. And I didn't know how to fertilize it at that time either, but now I'm going to fertilize it as I'm fertilizing all the trees that I transplanted. And I really hope this little fella makes it, because in the fall I want to transplant this up in the front with the other spruces. I think an Alberta spruce would be a beautiful addition to my living fence. So I will keep you all updated how things go in the future with all of my trees and my fertilizing efforts. And I hope that you enjoyed this video today. If you did, please like and subscribe. And I hope that you learned a lot about fertilizer. I know it can be overwhelming because I was completely overwhelmed. I don't even know everything there is to know about fertilizers still. I mean, those numbers, I'm saying, okay, it's high in this and it's low in that. I really don't know what a 52 is compared to a 14 or a 17 or a 12 or a 0. All I know is that it needs a certain amount of this and a certain amount of that, and there's still a lot more studying to do. So like I said, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time on Rain's Kitchen and Garden. Bye!